What's going on? YouTube, listen up, young elder gang. This is Dr. Charles P. Winston at you with another banger. Please make sure you like, subscribe and share this video. Fam, I hope this video get at least 100,000 likes. In this video you will find history definitions, scripture information, and best of all what we Americans have been deprived of from the beginning, the truth. Keep in mind, this content used in this video is intended for entertainment, educational and informational purposes only. We will give you the total truth as we best understand it. Today, be sure to hit that like button, young elder gang. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Hit that bell and don't forget to check back with us every day for new content. To understand the Vietnam War, we need to go back to the 1800s, when Vietnam was part of French Indochina. The French exploited Vietnam's resources, building infrastructure mainly for themselves. Vietnamese people faced high taxes, harsh labor, and few rights in their own land. Naturally, resentment grew. Many wanted independence. Ho Chi Minh emerged as a key leader inspired by communism and determined to free Vietnam. He became a symbol of hope, uniting people from all walks of life under the Viet Minh movement. Their goal ended French colonial rule. World War II complicated things. Japan invaded, then left chaos after their defeat. In 1945, Ho Chi Minh declared Vietnam's independence in Hanoi. But France wasn't ready to let go of its colony. The stage was set for a new conflict. The desire for freedom and self-rule would drive Vietnam's next chapter. The seeds of war were sown in these years of struggle. The world was about to take notice. Wars are often framed as ideological battles: communism versus democracy, liberation versus colonialism. But beneath these narratives lies another force profit. The Vietnam War, like many conflicts, was a business opportunity for international banking syndicates in New York, London, and Zurich. Massive loans funded the war, accruing interest and locking nations into cycles of debt. Currency speculation, especially as the South Vietnamese dong fluctuated, created fortunes for those far from the front lines. Even post-war reconstruction was lucrative. Contracts to rebuild devastated infrastructure were worth billions, with banks financing both destruction and recovery. This raises a disturbing question. Did financial interests have a stake in prolonging the war? The war's staggering cost in lives and resources becomes even more tragic if for some it was just a line item on a balance sheet. This perspective doesn't erase the ideological motives, but it complicates the story. It suggests that decisions in Washington and Hanoi may have been influenced by those with no allegiance but to profit. Was the Vietnam War extended not just by politics, but by calculated financial interests? After Vietnam declared independence, France tried to reclaim its colony, sparking the First Indochina War in 1946. The French had modern weapons. The Viet Minh, led by Ho Chi Minh and General Giap, relied on guerrilla tactics and local support. The French controlled cities, but the Viet Minh dominated the countryside. It became a war of endurance, colonial power versus a determined independence movement. The turning point came at Dien Bien Phu in 1954. The French set up a fortified base hoping to crush the Viet Minh. Instead, Giap's forces surrounded and bombarded them, carrying artillery through mountains and jungles. The French were trapped and after weeks of siege surrendered. This shocking defeat ended France's colonial ambitions in Vietnam. The world saw that a determined local force could defeat a European power. France was forced to negotiate. The war's end would reshape Vietnam and global politics. The next chapter would be decided not on the battlefield, but at the negotiating table. The struggle for Vietnam's future was far from over. The world's superpowers were about to get involved. With France defeated, world powers met in Geneva in 1954 to decide Vietnam's fate. The Geneva Accords ended French rule and called for a ceasefire. Vietnam was temporarily divided at the 17th parallel, Ho Chi Minh's communists in the north, a non-communist state in the south. This split was meant to last only until nationwide elections in 1956. The plan reunified Vietnam after a free vote, But the South, backed by the US, refused to hold elections fearing a communist victory. The temporary line became a hard border. Hopes for peaceful reunification vanished. The division set the stage for a new, even bigger conflict. The Cold War's shadow loomed over Vietnam. The world watched as tensions escalated. The seeds of the next war were firmly planted. Why did the US care about Vietnam? The answer lies in the Cold War. After World War II, the world split into two camps, the US and its allies versus the Soviet Union and China. Vietnam became a battleground in this global struggle. The Soviets and Chinese backed North Vietnam, hoping to spread communism. The US saw a communist Vietnam as a threat to its influence in Asia. American leaders believed stopping communism in Vietnam was crucial. They poured money and support into South Vietnam, hoping to build a strong anti-communist state. The conflict was no longer just about Vietnam's future, it was a test of superpower resolve. The Cold War turned a local fight into a global showdown. The Vietnamese people were caught in the middle, the stakes had never been higher. US leaders feared the domino theory. If Vietnam fell to communism, neighboring countries would follow. Southeast Asia was seen as a row of dominoes. Losing one could topple them all. This fear drove US policy. Vietnam became the place to draw the line against communism. The domino theory made the war seem vital to America's security. It justified sending money, weapons, and eventually troops. The theory oversimplified Vietnam's complex history and nationalism, but it convinced leaders that losing Vietnam meant losing all of Asia. The US was determined to keep the first domino standing. The local conflict became a global priority. US involvement in Vietnam grew gradually. At first, America sent money and advisors to help South Vietnam fight the communist Viet Cong. The South's government was weak and unpopular, while the Viet Cong gained ground. The turning point came in 1964 with the Gulf of Tonkin incident. The US claimed its ships were attacked, leading Congress to give President Johnson broad war powers. Soon, America launched massive bombing campaigns and sent combat troops. What began as a small advisory mission became a full-scale war. US troop numbers soared into the hundreds of thousands. The mission shifted from support to direct combat. America was now deeply committed to a costly and controversial war. The conflict escalated beyond anyone's expectations. The war's outcome would have global consequences. Vietnam became America's most challenging battlefield. On the ground, the Vietnam War was a relentless struggle for survival. Both North and South Vietnam faced crippling manpower shortages, forcing teenagers into combat and shattering families. The North relied on guerrilla tactics and the perilous Ho Chi Minh Trail, while the South, backed by the US, used overwhelming firepower, often at the expense of civilian lives. Villages vanished, millions were displaced, and the social fabric was torn apart. The war's devastation left a demographic imbalance and crippled the economy. In the North, industry was bombed into ruin. In the South, dependence on US aid bred corruption and inequality. Agriculture collapsed, and forced relocations deepened poverty. The war didn't just destroy infrastructure, it left Vietnam impoverished and dependent for generations. The true cost was measured not just in casualties, but in a nation's broken spirit and lost potential. The Vietnam War and drugs? Two words you probably wouldn't expect to see in the same sentence, but trust me, history made them inseparable. So what if the Vietnam War was actually fought over the control of drugs? This is how it plays out. First up, production. Imagine the government, with US backing, rolling out a system to monitor opium poppy fields, like literally putting fences around them and making sure they're only used to make medicine. Farmers are pushed to swap out poppies for coffee, tea, or rubber. The government even sweetens the deal with guaranteed buyers, so you grow coffee, you get paid. Sounds good, right? But let's get real. Eradication efforts during the real war didn't work too well. Spraying chemicals, torching fields, these measures just sent growers deeper into the jungle. Next, let's talk about smuggling. Picture this. elite teams disrupting major drug routes through Laos, Cambodia and Thailand. There's top-level intel gathering, and for once, neighbouring countries are all in, sharing info, launching raids, even working with global agencies. Imagine Interpol running ops in Southeast Asia, busting refineries left and right. But here's the catch: corruption. During the war, plenty of officials and soldiers were on the take, helping the drug trade thrive. In this scenario, there's an all-out assault on black market networks around military bases, cracking down on the shadowy dealers who made drugs easy to get. Now, what about the troops themselves? Back then, heroin and marijuana were everywhere. In our alternate universe, the military goes hardcore, zero tolerance, random drug testing, and mandatory rehab for anyone caught using. Education programs kick in, warning about the real dangers, like losing your health, your job, your future. But it's not just about punishment. The military realizes that stress, boredom and trauma are driving soldiers to use, so they invest in better living conditions, more downtime, and real mental health support. Fix the root causes and maybe, just maybe, drug use drops. Meanwhile, public awareness campaigns hit the airwaves, targeting both soldiers and locals. The message: drug abuse hurts everyone. On the big picture front, this effort stretches into politics and diplomacy. Regional agreements with Laos, Cambodia and Thailand get everyone on the same page. There's real aid for farmers to escape poverty, and international pressure to keep the Golden Triangle's drug lords in check. But here's the tough truth. Even with all these strategies, tight controls, tough enforcement, rehab and diplomacy, history shows us that drug control in wartime is insanely complicated. The Vietnam War, as it happened, saw more drugs, not less. But imagining a different story helps us understand what could have been, and why real change takes more than just good intentions. If you're a history buff like me, it's fascinating to see how the best plans can unravel, especially when war, politics and economics collide. Vietnam's fight for independence is inseparable from its long, fraught relationship with China. Centuries of Chinese domination forged a fierce Vietnamese identity, fueling resistance against both French and American powers. Ho Chi Minh became the face of this struggle, though some claim his identity was shaped, or even replaced, by outside interests, highlighting China's deep influence. China's support for North Vietnam was strategic, not unconditional. Beijing wanted a dependent neighbour, not a strong rival. Aid was given to bog down the US, but not enough for a swift victory. Today, Vietnam and China are economic partners and rivals, especially in the contested South China Sea. Vietnam's leaders must balance economic necessity with the imperative to guard sovereignty. The shadow of China remains, a constant reminder that Vietnam's quest for true independence is ongoing. The war's legacy is a delicate dance between cooperation and mistrust. After 1975, Vietnam was unified but devastated. Its centrally planned economy led to poverty and isolation. In contrast, South Korea rebuilt with US aid and capitalism, becoming a global economic powerhouse. By the mid-1980s, Vietnam's leaders recognized failure and launched Doi Moi reforms, opening the door to private enterprise and foreign investment. The results were dramatic. Vietnam became a manufacturing hub, its cities transformed, and growth soared. Yet political openness did not follow. Vietnam remains a one-party state, with no free press or tolerance for dissent. South Korea, meanwhile, evolved into a vibrant democracy. Vietnam's challenge is to manage a young, ambitious population that enjoys economic freedom but not political rights. The government walks a tightrope, fostering growth while maintaining control. The contrast with South Korea highlights the different paths nations can take after war. Vietnam's future depends on balancing prosperity with the demands for greater freedom. After decades of conflict, what was truly gained? The US failed to stop communism, but Vietnam didn't become the domino that toppled Southeast Asia. Instead, it emerged battered, struggling to recover, and ironically, now helps counter Chinese influence in the region. The war's legacy is loss and resilience, families shattered, land poisoned, and freedom elusive. Economic growth has come, but political freedoms lag behind. Vietnam stands at a crossroads. It must integrate globally while protecting its sovereignty from both China and the US. The challenge is to embrace opportunity without losing identity or control. Vietnam's future will be shaped not by war, but by its ability to reconcile past suffering with new ambitions. The world watches to see if Vietnam can build a future that is truly its own. The Vietnam War was a battle between two visions: communist reunification versus a non-communist South. North Vietnam, led by Ho Chi Minh, saw reunification as their destiny. The South, backed by the US, fought to remain independent. But the South's government struggled with corruption and lacked popular support. As the war dragged on, American casualties and costs mounted. Anti-war protests erupted across the US. By 1973, America withdrew its troops after a peace agreement. Fighting continued between North and South Vietnam. Without US support, the South quickly collapsed. In 1975, North Vietnamese forces captured Saigon. Vietnam was reunified under communist rule. For America, it was a painful defeat. For Vietnam, it was the end of war and the start of rebuilding. Thanks for watching, and let me know what you think. Could drug control have ever really worked in Vietnam?